I am very delighted to be invited to speak in the Bangladesh Innovation Fest 2022, organized by the Bangladesh Innovation Conclave and Bangladesh Brand Forum. I'm Hillol Bala, Conrad Prebys Professor of Information Systems at the Kelley School of Business, Indiana University in the United States. The Kelley School of Business is one of the leading business schools in the US and the world. Many of our programs are ranked top in various business school rankings. I'm truly honored and delighted to represent the Kelley School of Business that has a long-standing relationship with Bangladesh in such an important occasion, the Bangladesh Innovation Fest. I am actually originated from Bangladesh. I graduated from the Institute of Business Administration, IBA, at the University of Dhaka. Then I did my master's in information systems, an MBA, and a PhD in information systems in the United States. And I have been on the faculty at the Kelley School of Business since 2008. I mentioned earlier that the Kelley School of Business has a long-standing relationship with Bangladesh. So one of the relationships actually was with IBA, my alma mater in Bangladesh. IBA was founded in collaboration with the Kelley School of Business back in mid-60s. So I'm very delighted and honored to represent IBA also in the Kelley School of Business. So I'm also thankful to Mr. Shariful Islam, who we fondly call Sharif Bhai since our IBA days, to invite me to speak in Bangladesh Innovation Fest. And I also thank Professor Farhat Anwar, who actually reconnected me with Sharif Bhai several years back. Dr. Farhat Anwar was actually one of the faculty members when I was a student of IBA, so many years back. And then he later became the director of IBA. And I have been very fortunate to be in touch with him since the time he visited the Kelley School of Business several years back as the director of IBA. So today, I'll talk about two very important yet simple ideas about innovation. I strongly believe that innovation is one of the key success factors for any nation, any organization, even for individuals. In that regard, organizing the Bangladesh Innovation Fest is actually a great initiative to promote the notion of innovation and to develop an innovation ecosystem in Bangladesh. So given that my area of expertise about technology, I do my teaching and research in the area of information systems. So my focus actually will be about digital innovation and associated technologies. So as I mentioned that I'll be talking about two important yet simple ideas. My first idea is to think about the notion of digital ambition. A country, a nation may have digital ambition. For example, Bangladesh has a digital ambition to become digital Bangladesh. Similarly, organizations in Bangladesh should also have ambition about their digital innovation. However, that ambition has to be contextually driven. So I think we need to think about that as well. So I'll be focusing on that in my talk today as well. So let me actually start with a simple and interesting story. So a few months back, I was invited to speak in front of several business leaders in the Chittagong Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So while I was talking about digital transformation, digital innovation, a gentleman asked me a very important question. So he was asking me that, why would I need to use a digital app or a mobile app to order food where I could just send my driver to pick up the food from any restaurant in the city? He was also asking me that why would I need a digital marketplace for my transportation needs where I could just pick up my phone and call someone who can send me any number of trucks that I need for my transportation need for my business. So while I was thinking about these questions, I felt that these are actually very important questions. So we have to think deeply about how we can address these questions. So I felt that there are two aspects that we need to understand. And those two aspects will eventually help us understand how we can think of these questions. So let me kind of talk about what are these aspects. So the first notion is the idea of digital ambition. What kind of ambition we have as an organization, as business leaders, to innovate digitally or to use digital technologies for innovation. However, having innovation is not enough. We have to think about how contextual our ideas are, how contextual our ambitions are. So the notion of contextual innovation is important. So I felt that together, the idea of digital innovation and the idea of contextual innovation would help us answer those two very important questions, that what are the true use cases of digital innovation for Bangladesh, how Bangladeshi business leaders could think of digital innovation through the development of contextual digital ambition. So I'll be focusing on that. So let's first think about what is the benefit, or why do we have to think about the idea of, for example, digital ambition. So if we think about it, there is a tremendous amount of digital consumer in Bangladesh. So the internet use has been tremendous in Bangladesh. A lot of people have smart devices. So I believe that we have to think about how we can cater this new generation of digital consumer, where essentially the experience is important. We have to respond in real time. We have to be agile. So consumers have a lot of choices, and these are new generation of consumers. So in order for us to actually understand the need of these consumers, we have to develop an ambition. We have to develop digital ambition. We have to think about the innovation that can help us. So what exactly is digital ambition? So essentially, digital ambition represents a set of goals that our leaders, the business leaders, will develop, and they want to address, or they want to meet that goal through digital technologies. However, again, as I mentioned earlier, that we have to be thinking about the context of our ambition. So for example, something that may work in one context may not work in our context. That is very important for us to understand as we think about developing our digital ambition. So how can we think of digital ambition? What are some of the dimensions that will help us to think about the notion of digital ambition? So one of the dimensions would be the idea of the market or customers. So for example, some organization may want to master or serving the existing customer. So that is one dimension. Or some organization may want to find new customer. They want to enter new market. So there is a spectrum there. There is a sort of a continuum there. And we have to understand where we want to play in terms of developing our digital ambition or our digital innovation. So another dimension is essentially how we can actually do that. So are we going to develop new products? Are we going to develop digital products? Are we going to expand our offerings? Are we going to develop new business models? So that is another dimension for us to think about. So if we think about these two dimensions, then we can always think of what are some of the areas. So what kind of ambition we are thinking about? Some digital ambition could be fully transformational. So what does it mean? It means that we are not only thinking about a new market or new set of customers, we are also thinking about developing new products. We're also thinking about developing new business models. That might be transformational and too radical for some organizations. Some organization may focus on the core by we want to actually develop and what kind of goal we have. So now developing the ambition essentially requires some direction. So what kind of direction we have as we think of this ambition. So we have to actually think about some sort of a strategy. Okay, so the strategies again could be based on what kind of business model we have. Are we comfortable with our current business model and just try to digitize or offer some additional improvement through digitalization? So that dimension is what we call business optimization through digital technologies or digital ideas. So here, essentially, we are not radically changing our business model. We're still focusing on our current customers. We're still focusing on our current set of products or services. However, we are thinking about how we can use digital technologies to improve them, how we can increase our revenue, how we can provide better customer service, how we can provide better customer experience. So that will be one dimension. We are trying to optimize our current business through the use of digital technologies. So what would be some examples of that? So an organization, for example, a hospital in Bangladesh could actually offer various services through their websites, could actually offer various patient information, scheduling through mobile apps, perhaps deliver lab reports through websites so that customers really don't have to, or patients don't have to come back to receive the lab reports. So these would be example of business optimization, essentially keeping the same set of products and services, but providing better customer experience. So eventually it will impact the revenue and the bottom line of an organization. However, there is another dimension to that. Some organizations may have already achieved significant business optimization. They already improved their existing products and services, their customer experience. So now they're thinking about entering new market. They are thinking about improving or developing new business models through the use of digital technologies. So for example, continuing with the example of the healthcare organization, so a hospital may want to develop a platform where essentially patients will be able to do or take advantage of the platform for all kinds of health needs. So the platform could provide them advice, the platform could provide them preventative services, the platform could provide them information about their medication, about their future appointments, perhaps all their vitals and everything will be there. So essentially a one-stop platform or one-stop service for all kinds of healthcare needs. So that's basically expanding their current set of products and services. Essentially, we can call that a digital business transformation. So you're entering new products and new services, you're expanding that through the idea of a platform. And I'll talk about platform a little bit later as well. So these are the two ideas that we have, that you can optimize your current business through digital technologies. Or if you are happy with your current business optimization, then you want to transform that through introduction of new products and services and new business model. However, nothing is possible without actually first using what we call the technology enablement. So what do I mean by that? So essentially, we have to think about developing or modernizing our technology landscape. So at the core of any organization, there are certain type of systems, enterprise systems that have to be developed. These systems will integrate and standardize our business processes. Once we have the digital core of the organization, then there are many new state-of-the-art technologies that will help us do the optimization and transformation. AI technologies could help us understand our customer expectations. There are technologies around blockchain. There are technologies around IoT, Internet of Things. There are many technologies, virtual realities. Again, I'll talk later about the contextual use case of these technologies. So just because some of these technologies are widely available in certain contexts in Western world does not necessarily mean that our use cases will be similar in Bangladesh. So we have to think about what are the ideal use cases, keeping the socioeconomic factors in mind, the cultural factors in mind. However, the technologies are available. So we have to think about how we can enable our organizations through various digital technologies. So now I'm going to actually use a very simple example to understand the notion of this sort of digital ambition and optimization transformation. So let's think about the music industry. And many of you know sort of the music industry used to be primarily analog. I remember when I was growing up, we had like cassette players and cassette tapes and all those things. So eventually there was a time when the music industry globally faced huge piracy networks back in 2000. That is the time I came to the US, and a lot of people started downloading music from various illegal websites and all those things. So then essentially at some point, the entire music industry sort of became more digital. So essentially people could listen to music from their computers, from websites and all those things. And eventually we have all these digital music streaming services. And then essentially the industry is still evolving. So we don't know how the industry will evolve in the future, but the evolution is still happening in that perspective. So essentially what happened is that the music industry, it moved from analog to digital products, and now it's moving to what we call digital platform. So for example, Spotify and many other platforms are essentially providing sort of digital music to consumers. So if we think about it, it's an interesting journey for one industry. And in that journey, many type of technologies, many organizations essentially became obsolete. So we have to think about that in all different kind of industry segment in Bangladesh also. Things will change rapidly, customer demand will change, customer expectations will change, and eventually without some sort of a digital innovation and digital ambition, many industry segments, many type of organizations will be obsolete as well in Bangladesh. So to think about it. So now the idea of technology enablement, business optimization, and business transformation, everything happened in the music industry as well. So initially responding to piracy and everything, a lot of technologies actually evolved. Some of you probably remember there are various music formats that became very popular, MP3 and other formats. So that is a time when essentially we saw digital technology enablement in the music industry. And eventually those technology enablement led to business optimization, and eventually it became a transformed industry the way we see it in today's world. So similar things will happen in other areas as well. So what is one of the lessons here? So one of the major lessons is that there will be a lot of disruptions that will happen in most industry segments, and many organizations will face these disruptions. So we have to respond to these disruptions. Through the use of digital technologies, some of these disruptions could be actually addressed. So for example, if you think about the idea of digital platform, what is a digital platform? Essentially, it's an intermediary through digital technologies where various players like consumers, producers, they'll come together and they'll generate economic value for each other. So that's a very important idea in today's world. So I believe that there are tremendous opportunities in Bangladesh to develop digital platform. We have a huge consumer base. We have young generation who are technology savvy, who are very much used to use all kinds of modern technologies. So we have to actually develop platforms that are contextually relevant for Bangladesh so that we can capture sort of the need and the demand of all the newer generation of consumers who are digital consumers. So to think about it. And also you have to also understand that platforms are essentially the operating system of any ecosystem. So if we want to develop ecosystem for innovation, if you want to develop ecosystem for supply chain, if you want to develop ecosystem for education, if we want to develop ecosystem for healthcare, so all these ecosystems are important for Bangladesh. However, without developing the proper digital platform, we will not be able to take advantage of these ecosystems that we see in Western worlds and other worlds. So something to think about, that how can we develop ambition to develop digital products, and from digital products, we need to develop digital platforms, and eventually these platforms will help us develop ecosystems that will probably drive innovation in Bangladesh in the future. So you have to kind of think about that. So now we have to think about the idea of context. I mentioned earlier that developing digital ambition is actually not enough. So we have to develop mindful contextual adaptation of digital innovation. So many technologies are popular. However, what are the use cases in Bangladesh for those technologies? So I believe that the contextual innovation is important. So by contextual innovation, I mean that what are the contextual factors in Bangladesh, the unique factors in Bangladesh, and how digital innovation could be contextualized, could be mindfully adapted in the context of Bangladesh. So let's think about some of these contextual factors. Culture is an important contextual factor. So there are certain culture, our consumers are culture driven. So they expect things to be done in a certain way. So we have to think about the connection between digital innovation to our culture. How can we innovate that are suitable for our culture. There are various socioeconomic factors that are important. We have to understand those. So, for example, in Bangladesh, it's a labor economy. So we have a tremendous human capital in Bangladesh. So, for example, many innovation in the Western world is actually about automation, where human intervention is supposed to be eliminated. So we don't want human intervention. But I believe in Bangladesh, the innovation actually will have to follow the labor economy, where we have tremendous human capital. We have to leverage the human capital. So in various ways, there are many type of digital services that could be developed where human touch is available, where we can actually make use of our human capital very well. So you have to think about that. It's not about automation, elimination of human capital. It's more about how to better leverage the human capital through our digital innovation. We have to think about the industry. So depending on what industry we are operating, what kind of ambition we have. So some industries probably require more aggressive digital innovation. So then ambition has to be more aggressive. Some industries might be a little bit slow, but they do still have some requirements, some expectation when it comes to innovation. So think about that. Think about the market. So what kind of market we are operating? There are various market characteristics, B2B, B2C, or even within B2B and B2C. There are various types of market arrangements. So you have to understand that. So the market type that are actually suitable in one context may not be suitable in Bangladesh's context. So you have to think about that. The nature of the innovation. Are we talking about radical innovation? Are we talking about more incremental innovation? Are we talking about disruptive innovation? So the nature of the innovation is also important as we think about our contextual factors. The type of organization. So what kind of organization we are focusing on? Some organizations are very hierarchical. Some organizations are kind of already very innovative. So you have to understand, because not all innovation probably will work in all organizational contexts. So we have to kind of be mindful about that. And finally, the technology. So again, I mentioned several times already, the technology is an interesting piece here. In many cases, innovations are driven because of technology. However, we have to think about it in a different way. Actually, it's not the technology that should drive innovation. It's not that we have to use AI just because AI technologies are now available. Actually, the context should drive the choice of the technology. So what are some of the things that we need for Bangladesh's context? So once we identify that, then we go and think about what technologies are available to actually help us achieve those contextual goals. So that is very important for us to always think about. The nature of the technology is important, but the technology has to be contextually selected. And that will kind of help us provide more contextually important use of technology, especially for Bangladesh's context. So these are some of the contextual factors that we have to think about as we think about our digital ambition and eventually our need for digital innovation. So now, so basically I talked about two simple ideas that we have to develop digital ambition. However, the ambition has to be contextually driven. So what can we do today to sort of move forward with these two simple ideas? So what I suggest is that business leaders should think about developing or organizing a workshop essentially within the organization. It's essentially coming up with digital ambition, a set of digital ambition statements, perhaps roadmaps, perhaps a digital journey map. But however, it has to be contextually driven. So as we think of this workshop, we have to ask some of the questions. So what does digital mean for your organization? What are your digital principles, your digital goals, your knowledge of digital? That is important because sometimes our business leaders may not have the understanding of the opportunities that are out there through digital innovation. What are the important contextual factors for your organization? Sort of the environmental factors for your organization. How do these contextual factors actually influence your digital ambition, your digital innovation ideas? And then where do you want to go from here? So again, if I go back to the two questions that the gentleman actually asked me, two excellent questions essentially, that what are basically the use cases? Why do someone in Bangladesh use mobile app? why would someone actually be part of a digital marketplace? Because some of these concepts are probably driven by what we see in the Western world. But what are their contextual use for Bangladesh? So once we kind of understand that, then I believe the gentleman will find the answer to his questions himself. He'll be able to find the answer through contextual understanding of how mobile apps could be used in Bangladesh as well. How essentially digital marketplace could help Bangladesh's business to be more efficient. Because the main idea here is that if we do not actually want to be disrupted, then we have to do something to disrupt. Because just because something is actually is working very well for us today, doesn't mean that it will be exactly like that in the future. So we have to be always mindful about disruptions. And digital disruptions are happening rapidly everywhere. Many traditional organizations and business leaders may think that they are not going to be disrupted in Bangladesh because of certain socioeconomic characteristics of Bangladesh, but things will rapidly change. The rise of digital consumer, the young generation, and all those things will lead to significant possibilities of disruption in Bangladesh. So all business leaders in Bangladesh should start thinking about their digital ambition, think about the contextual factors that will probably give us a better sense of what kind of digital innovation will help them to be successful in the future. So that's basically the ideas that I have for today. And if anyone has any questions for me, please reach out to me. My email address is right there. I'll be happy to talk to you if you have any questions or any comments about digital ambition and contextual innovation. Thank you so much for your time.